This is the new KTM 390 Adventure, a motorcycle we're really excited about since we saw it and now we've ridden it. And the reason we're excited about it is because compared to its predecessor, which was a bouquet of compromises since it was essentially a Duke with slightly longer travel suspension, this one's been thought about and designed from the ground up as an ADV. Yes, it shares the same mainframe and the engine in the exact same form like the Duke, but there are enough other mechanical changes to actually make it a good ADV. Now, in this video, we'll tell you what's good and what's not about the new 390 Adventure. But before we get there, we thought we'll answer 5 questions that most of you have been asking about this motorcycle. Number 1. Yes, it has an underbelly exhaust, but KTM or Bajaj says that this can wade through water till this level without a problem, and you can turn off the motorcycle, start it, all of this while this is underwater, and none of the water will go inside because of the way the baffles and the chamber is designed. So if you get an aftermarket exhaust, ensure that you get something that's going up, because if you change the whole thing and you keep it underbelly, chances are it'll go in. So that's one thing sorted. Number 2, you might have seen in all the promotional videos that the new 390 ADV comes with strong driving lights right here and here, but that's the R. This is the N, so no, this does not get that. But Bajaj says that if there's enough of you ask who want the R, then Bajaj will get it homologated and you'd be able to buy one. Then of course, this has tubeless wheels. Now, they might look like regular spoke wheels, but this is proprietary KTM tech, so they've got a tape inside holding which seals the nipples of the spokes, and then there's another rubber beading. And then also the way the rim is designed, it holds the tire better, so there is less air or there's no air that can escape. So it's a simpler setup than cross spokes. It gives you a narrower rim, and this is something that KTM employs everywhere. Then of course, since it's an ADV, many of you would like to know or want to know whether it comes with a main stand. No, it does not, but you can buy it as an official accessory and it will fit it. So if you want a center stand, you can get it. And finally, number 5, yes, there is cruise control and it is really well sorted. We've been using it. It feels very intuitive. It's easy to use. There is a slight jerk when it gets off, but that's probably because we're so used to rolling off the throttle gently. It doesn't get in the way, and I think it's a good feature to have. Now, as you can tell, that this motorcycle looks nothing like its predecessor, and what KTM or Bajaj have done is that they have given it a proper rally style or adventure style look to this motorcycle, and it all begins with a dominant, a visually heavy front and a leaf and a little insignificant rear, a narrower rear in a way. So you can see it starts with a 21-inch wheel, so that automatically gives you some presence. Then you've got long travel suspension. You've got this really tall front fairing, and apart from blocking the air really well, it of course looks visually good too. Then you've got a high tank, and then things just drop down and you've got this really narrow section at the back. So a lot of visual bulk at the front, very little at the back, and this is something that is inspired from KTM's Dakar motorcycles, and it gives you that proper ADV rally feel. Now, when it comes to seating ergos, KTM or Bajaj have done a really good job, because this is one really comfortable motorcycle. At least for me, I am 5'8", and it starts with a handlebar. It's not too wide, it's not too high, and it's well angled towards me. So it's a very easy to reach handlebar. I still have some bend in my arms, feels comfortable. And then when you move back to the seat height, it might say 830 mm, but honestly, with my height, I can put both my feet firmly on the ground, spread them apart as well a little, and that's down to, of course, the fact that I'm heavy, so the suspension settles under my weight, and 2, it's got a really narrow waist, so very approachable in that sense. And then when you look at the foot peg positioning, you will find that it is a little cramped in terms of the distance between the foot pegs and the seat. That's also down to the fact that it has this really thick footrest rubber, and that's mainly in place because the vibrations on the foot pegs are quite a bit. And so to damp that, they've had to use a really thick rubber. With the rubber, the vibrations are not too bad, but and we haven't really tried without the rubber, but that would be the rationale behind such thick rubber. And that does cramp your riding position a little bit. Maybe if you ride without the rubber, it might open up a little bit. But overall, it's a very comfortable motorcycle to be in, whether you want to do long distances, whether you just want to commute. Feels very natural, and yeah, I quite like it. Now this is a KTM, and so you'd expect it to outdo its predecessor in terms of features and feel-good features mainly. And this one doesn't disappoint either. It starts with tubeless wheels, front and rear. And then you've got these really nice projector LED headlamps. You've got this tall, useful fairing at the front to give it the look, and of course, very strong wind protection. Then you've got adjustable levers, you've got adjustable suspension, front and rear. The front is adjustable for compression and rebound, the rear for preload and rebound. And then you've got this electronic module which allows you to have cruise control, a handy feature really, something that we'll have to get used to, but once you do, you will end up liking it. And it's got 3-axis IMU sensor, so you've got cornering ABS and other bits that come with it. And then of course, it also has traction control, which you can turn off. You've got 3 riding modes. You've got rain, you've got street, and you've got off-road, which essentially changes the intervention of ABS and MTC, plus the throttle response. What we would have liked is an additional mode between off-road and street, which would give it that sort of aggression in throttle input like off-road, but keep all the electronics on, so you can use it on the road for touring or for riding aggressively on the road. But overall, it is a really feature-rich motorcycle, and for the price, I think you're getting a lot of value. The TFT instrumentation also offers Bluetooth connectivity and turn-by-turn navigation, but it also gives the rider to configure the ride mode to suit their needs better. For instance, one can choose the off-road mode, wherein the bike feels the most alive, and then turn on the traction control and the rear wheel ABS so that the adventure is safe and fast to use on the road as well. This is the combo we would recommend if you're looking for the most bang for your buck in terms of the riding experience with the new 390 ADV. Now, like we said at the start, the main frame as well as the engine has been carried over from the Duke as is. The only real change is that this motorcycle now runs a bigger rear sprocket, so overall gearing, at least on paper, is shorter. However, there have been changes made to the throttle maps, and overall, this motorcycle feels lazier, more relaxed, easier than the Duke. So anybody can get on board and get riding it. It's not as demanding. And as a result, it's also not as exciting. The engine characteristics, otherwise, it sounds similar, and you of course have some vibes throughout the rev range, but they're never excessive and you can easily get used to them. In terms of sound too, the NVH overall isn't something that's going to put you off. But yes, it is a departure from what we've seen from KTMs. It is a departure from what we expect from KTM. Now, if you've never ridden a KTM before and you get on this, it'll feel very nice. But if you are a KTM fanboy, then chances are that you're not going to be very excited with the way this engine puts down its power. Much like the older bikes, the new one manages the heat quite well. But it's the low and mid-range performance of this engine which is significantly better than the older bike, and that should make it friendlier and easier to ride daily. It's time for proof of the pudding, which is how the KTM 390 Adventure feels on the road. Well, we said that the engine doesn't feel very exciting and the throttle response, all of that is mellow, but that's compared to KTM. But don't think that this is a slow motorcycle. It is deceptively fast. You've got this fairing or this windshield that really protects you all the way, so much so, and it's so effective that you don't even get enough ventilation here, but you're so well cocooned that you don't realize how fast you're going, and before you know it, you're sitting at 130, 135. You have to look at the speedometer to really see and feel how fast you're going. So it's very relaxed and very fast. So if you're looking for a touring motorcycle, I think this, in terms of sheer speed, this does well. And not just that, like we spoke about the ergos are comfy. And everything that you feel and touch, the response is strong. You've got brakes that respond well, there's good progression, there's good bite. There is some amount of dive, but that also is because we've left the suspension in the stock setting, which is middle of the road. So if you want less dive, you can work on the compression and all of that, which we will work on in following reviews. This time we thought we'll just keep it as simple as possible to give you a first hand impression of what it feels like. And then when you talk about the suspension in its stock or middle of the road setting, it's still a very good setting to have, because it rounds the bumps really well, it takes on the undulations well. When you crest or go through a trough, it doesn't bang off the suspension and throw you up. It just settles nicely, so it feels like you're floating on the road, and that's a really good feeling. So it doesn't matter whether you're riding slow or you're riding fast, it feels composed in that sense. If we were to nitpick, or if we were to say what is really missing, we'd say that the front end feel on this motorcycle is not as strong as we would have liked, as we've seen in other KTMs. It's not a vague front end in the sense that it's not going to wash out or anything, but it takes time to trust it because the feedback is not that strong. Again, like I said, we're nitpicking here. For most riders, it's not going to be a problem. Now, this motorcycle, if you are getting on this motorcycle and you've never been on a KTM, this will feel wonderful. And you could put any badge on this motorcycle and it will fit in. So that's, you could look at it as a negative or a positive, that it doesn't have that KTM DNA in that sense, but it's more a motorcycle meant for many, many people. But that's the only thing that feels that we would have liked better because it's a KTM. But overall, it's a motorcycle that's easy to ride, to commute, to tour on. And we quite enjoyed riding this one. Now, one of the reasons why we were excited about the new generation 390 Adventure was its off-roading ability, the promise of off-roading ability, because the previous one, the one it replaces, like we said at the start, it was a Duke on stilts in a way. And we first rode it 5 years back, and then I had the motorcycle for a year, the older one, and I just took it off-road 3 times, and that also out of need, not want. So you can figure that how difficult or how uninviting it was, and at that time I was really into off-roading. Fast forward to today, and I don't off-road at all. I think it's quite tedious, it's very, very demanding, and I'm not as fit. But this one has made our off-road riding extremely easy. I mean, I know I look all sweaty and tired, which I am, but it's almost like a heavier X-Pulse. So it's easy to balance, it's easy to find gaps in rocks, it's easy to jump it over rocks, it's easy to slide because it's got a longer wheelbase. And also the thing that we said we didn't like about this one in terms of it being a KTM, in terms of the linear throttle response or that non-exciting throttle response, that actually makes it much nicer to ride in a place like this. Plus, it's got this glide feature. So if you find that the terrain that you're on is a little too difficult for you, like I found today at some places where I wasn't sure whether I could sit down and ride or stand up and ride, I just walked the bike, and it was much simpler because the clutch is really light, it's very progressive, and with that glide feature you don't have to bother with the throttle. The bike will go through more stuff. And then when it comes to a dead end and you want to go around, I know most people would just use the elephant turn, but I don't know how to do that. But the good thing is that you can just rotate this on the side stand with as much ease. And I like that because it just feels so well balanced to do it. So if you don't know how to do the elephant turn and you get this bike, no worries, just turn it on the side stand and get going where you want. So overall, I'm very impressed with how this motorcycle does off-road. Things that we didn't like or we weren't appreciative of on-road actually make it quite nice and quite friendly off-road. So after 2 days of riding, what do we think about the new 390 KTM Adventure? Well, here are the good and bad bits about the motorcycle in summary. So the good bits, we think it looks the part. It feels the part in terms of riding, whether you're riding it off-road, whether you're riding it on the road, whether you're touring. It feels like it's a motorcycle meant for all sorts of terrain. and it's not demanding. So whether you're new to the adventure game or you've been doing it, you will feel comfortable on this motorcycle. It has very good suspension, it has good brakes. The 21-17 setup doesn't get in the way in terms of handling. Even on the road, yes, it's not the sharpest of motorcycles that you can find. It's not a KTM in that sense, but it does the job. So if you've got long sweepers, tight ones, it'll handle that. Then of course the feature list. There's just so much in it that it gives you immense bragging rights, and it just makes you feel that your money's worth is there on the table. Lots of, it just feels like great value in that sense. And if you haven't said it enough, it's a comfortable, easy to ride motorcycle. Anybody can get on it. And those are the major positives for this motorcycle. The negatives, and it starts from the fact that it is so friendly and so general in that sense that you can mistake it for anything else. You won't say that it's a KTM apart from that noise of the engine, a typical noise that you get. But otherwise, you could strap on any badge on this motorcycle and you'd be able to say that it belongs to that. So that KTM sense, that excitement that a KTM motorcycle that one expects is missing on this motorcycle. Like we said, it's not slow, it's fast, it's deceptively fast, but it's just not as exciting as you'd expect KTMs to be. Number two, you are paying 4.5 lakh almost on the road, but for that you're just not getting the quality levels that you expect, especially the black plastic that's been used on the motorcycle. And there are so many parts. It just seems like a lot of it is afterthought, and it's all been screwed together by, with screws, and eventually, I guess with age, you will probably get some amount of rattling. I know I'm jumping the gun here, but this is what I feel is going to be. So for a 4.5 lakh rupee motorcycle, that sense of premiumness in parts and what you look at is missing on this motorcycle. Then of course, there is that tall windshield. I think it does too good a job of what it's supposed to do. So if you're riding in the winters, if you're riding in Europe, it's great because it completely isolates you or protects you or envelops you from what is happening. And it gives you that sense of calm that is needed. But when you ride in Mumbai, when you ride in the summers, when you ride in Goa, in the humid weather, you are not getting anything on the torso. So it starts to get stifling and hot, and so you have to constantly stand up and sit down to be able to get some amount of wind into it. So for the Indian scenario, that might be a challenge if you buy one. And but yeah, that's essentially it. I think lots of pros for the motorcycle, a few cons. But overall, it's a motorcycle that's very likable, that can do it all. And if you don't really want that KTM flavor, I think it's a great motorcycle to go for because it'll just do a lot of stuff, almost everything that you want from it. But we have a feeling that the X, which is cheaper, which might not have the electronic suite of cruise control and 3-axis IMU system, that might be the better option to buy. But for that, we'll have to wait to ride the X, which we will soon. But if you want to buy one now, sure, you're not going to regret buying this one for sure.